In an unspecified future, society is divided into only two subtypes, the upper and lower classes. A prominent place for rebellious wealthy girls is Paradise Hills. It's located on a faraway island suitable for the needed therapy and healing of its admitted patients. One of them is Uma, a wealthy young lady who refuses to marry a man she does not love. However, Uma and her family's status is determined by her choice. Uma is at her wedding in an undetermined future and happily sings to her new husband, Sun. Numerous guests and relatives attend their grand wedding and congratulate the couple for a successful celebration. That night, Sun pins Uma to the bed while saying that she's changed drastically. According to him, Uma is much more obedient, incomparable to her attitude in the past. 2 months before the wedding, Uma wakes up in an unfamiliar room with dirty and muddled clothes. Out of nowhere, a voice control informs her that she's in paradise, just as 2 guards arrive at her room for breakfast. Uma runs outside, where she finds herself in some kind of a resort in the middle of nowhere. She attempts to escape, only to find that a cliff limits her escape. Desperate to run away, she runs to the beach and finds a cave where she takes shelter. Inside, she meets Amarna, who is using the cave to hide while smoking. Amarna comforts Uma and leads the way out, only to turn her into the guards. Uma's heart drops as she finds herself trapped in the so-called paradise. The island is a behavioral reformation center for women who are rebellious and have displeased their families. The guards bring Uma to the Duchess, who's in charge of running the center. She makes Uma understand that the center is a place for emotional healing. Uma's mother has involuntarily admitted her to the center in hopes of controlling her behavior. Although the place sounds like a prison, its facilities are beyond beautiful. The spaces are relaxing and serene to implicate healing on its patients. However, Uma refuses to accept any concept that would drive her to obey her mother. She sees the center as a place that would brainwash her, and she does everything to fight it. The Duchess always keeps her cool and acts motherly toward Uma, but even that won't comfort her. Shortly after that, the guards escort Uma to her room, where she meets Chloe and Yu. Chloe's parents sent her to the center to be skinny and be like a pageant queen like her sisters. On the other hand, Yu's relatives sent her after refusing to inherit the family business. After dinner, the guards prepare food that is duly accounted to each of the women's diets. Uma is surprised at the ample portions served, but the guards reiterate its importance. From under the table, Uma spots Amarna looking at her and gives her a smug look. Upon noticing it, Chloe and Yu inform Uma that Amarna is a famous singer. She's in the center because of her alcoholism and to recover from the bad effects of fame. Uma excuses herself to go to the bathroom, and Amarna follows her inside. She apologizes for what happened earlier and explains that she does not want the guards to discover the cave. She also defends herself by revealing the real reason for her admission. The company that controls her records sent her after singing her own songs. Before Amarna leaves, she tells Uma to meet her at midnight. However, Uma falls asleep and wakes up at daybreak instead. While wearing her uniform, she apologizes to Amarna, but the latter says that she fell asleep as well. Uma, Yu, and Chloe are being groomed with new hairstyles as part of their stay. The makeover begins, and in an instant, the 3 settle in with their new looks. A new look might help renew one's holistic self. The scene shows how Uma is somehow satisfied with her new appearance as required by the program. She looks through the mirror and likes what she sees, but it's someone that she's not. Everything she looks at is simply a facade. Her reflection only reminds her of the limited choices and changes that she has left in her life. Later that day, Uma meets with the Duchess once again to talk about her therapy and improvement. The Duchess asks Uma about the nature of her admission, her refusal to marry a rich man. Uma blames her mother for everything and says that she has no regard for her feelings. Enraged by the Duchess's response, Uma furiously walks away. Uma is brought to a secluded room where she's instructed to sit on a carousel horse as it levitates. Almost reaching the ceiling, Uma sees projected footage of Sun describing himself and his interests. Uma becomes annoyed as she's fixated on the fact that she does not want to marry Sun. The video plays several times again until the guards arrive and assist her out. They find out that Uma got too frustrated that she clenched her fists too hard, harming herself in the process. The guards assist her to the Duchess for another counseling session, but Uma is worn out. During the session, she reveals that she refuses to marry Sun because she loves someone else. However, the man she's in love with is a lower, thus her mother's withholding. The Duchess reiterates the life of abundance that she'll experience when she marries Sun, making Uma reflect on her words. For the following days, Uma adjusts and enjoys life on the island. She becomes closer to her friends and feels a sense of belonging in her stay. She also becomes more open to sharing her feelings with the Duchess and her friends. After days of feeling unsafe on the island, Uma finds refuge in her friends. She feels more at home with them than in the majestic corners of the center. Growing up in luxury, Uma knows that it will not amount to anything that she has a connection with. True happiness is in her relationship with people, not things. The ladies share a special bond because they know what it's like to have everything while being empty at the same time. One day, Marcus, her boyfriend, goes to the island and disguises himself as a gardener. Uma looks at him in awe as they embrace each other. Both of them go to a more private area of the island, where Marcus reveals his plan. There, he promises Uma that they'll escape and flee the island as soon as possible. Marcus shows Uma his room on the island, and they have an intimate moment. Little did they know, Armana watches them from a small window while shedding a tear as if jealousy overtakes her. That night, Amarna warns Uma to be careful of Marcus. She reminds Uma that she should be careful as to trusting Marcus. With this, Uma defends Marcus by saying that she's known him her whole life. Before bedtime, Uma looks at her locket that projects a moving image of her and her father. The necklace is her most prized possession, and she carries it with her at all times. At daybreak, Uma is frustrated to realize that her locket is nowhere to be found. As she looks for it, an alarm goes off through the whole island. According to the staff, an intruder is at bay, which alarms everyone. The girls observe from the balcony, but the Duchess orders them to get ready for the day instead. Yu talks back at her and causes a commotion as the Duchess pins her to the wall aggressively. To Yu's defense, Amana and the others reprimand the Duchess, and she walks away to address the problem. During their stay, it's the first time that the Duchess has displayed an off behavior. As she showed aggression, the window cracked, which implies that some kind of magic takes place on the island. Her overprotection over the island is also notable just by the sudden shift in her demeanor. In the past, Yu has brought up her struggles with anxiety and how she feels like dying whenever she experiences it. Luckily, her friends are present to walk her through the commotion and help her calm down. Shortly after, Uma accompanies Amarna to the cave, where the latter reveals her own escape plan. According to her, some of her fans smuggled a rowboat to the island without the administration noticing. Uma adds that the milk they drink is drugged, which causes them to be in a deep sleep all night. Amarna hands Uma's lost locket, claiming that she found it on the patio while the guards wheeled girls in. With growing concerns, Uma storms out of the cave to meet up with Marcus and says she has something important to tell him. Before their plan could be executed, the guards announced that Amarna would graduate earlier than expected. Confused, Uma runs to the bathroom to spit the milk and discuss the news with Amarna. She asks Amarna how they could reunite, so she entrusts her with a trinket with a map. Before they depart each other, the two share a kiss. This scene explains how Amarna has been protective of Uma about her plan to escape with Marcus. All along, she's been attracted to her. In some way, Amarna has been her guardian angel on the island. She's the one who comforts Uma and looks out for her. In return, Uma also realizes that she's been attracted to Amarna all along, something she did not expect from herself. That night, Uma doesn't fall asleep, unlike the other girls, because she skipped the milk. She sneaks out of bed only to find the guards wheeling unconscious girls in and out of their rooms with undisclosed intentions. The following day, she has another session in the carousel horse. However, instead of Sun's video, a montage of her family is flashed. Uma begins to cry as the screen shows how her father took his own life because of all their business's decline. She becomes frantic and runs from the guards as soon as she's free from the ties. As punishment, the guards drag Uma to their room for solitary confinement. She calls Marcus for help, but he's hesitant to do so, leaving Uma hurt. After some time, Uma regains consciousness and the guards bring her to the Duchess's office. To Uma's surprise, she sees Amarna on the screen, seemingly back to her regular life of fame. After, the Duchess arrives to tell her that Amarna is living her best life after leaving the center, which proves that their therapy is real and effective. She also adds that Uma has been asleep for 2 weeks and will leave the island the next morning. Upon hearing the shocking news, Uma runs to the cave to meet Chloe and Yu. She informs them about her escape plan, but only Chloe seems interested in participating. They try to persuade Yu to join them after exposing the dangers of the center, but to no avail. Uma then meets with Marcus to steal a remote control for the center's surveillance cameras. The scene shows how Uma has partially lost her feelings for Marcus. After her interaction with Amarna, it becomes unclear as to how her emotions are. For Yu, she refuses to leave the facility as she used to be a lower class. Proving herself to her wealthy relatives is the way for her to survive life away from the slums. Despite her danger for freedom and careless life, she knows that her relatives have a lot on her and she's tired of disappointing them. At dinner, Yu finally decides to join them by showing that she'll get rid of the milk. Hours later, it's time to sleep, but the trio remains awake and conscious. They hear the guards approach their room and get Yu, so Chloe and Uma act quickly and run to her rescue. Deep into the center, Chloe and Yu arrive at the operating room where Yu lies. Without a concrete plan, Chloe attacks one of the nurses out of nowhere, so Uma has no choice but to do the same. Both of them manage to fight off the nurses, but Yu is already injured. The trio runs through the corridors unnoticed and enters a monitoring room where they see themselves on the screens. They realize that the center is observing them instead of treating them. Every single thing about them, including their mannerisms, is seemingly measured and studied to make replicas. Uma also discovers that Marcus had no intention of rescuing her, but rather was employed to predict her sexual behavior. After running along the narrow hallways, the trio ends up in a room where they meet the replicants. They're women from poor walks of life who underwent extensive and holistic surgeries to attain their physique. Moreover, the replicants have studied mannerisms to act more like obedient versions of the ones that they're replacing. The women replacing them are the ones who wish for a better life for themselves. The only way for them to ascend the ladder of success is to pretend to be someone that they're not. As selfish as it seems, they see the admitted women as people who are throwing away a life of abundance. To have that, the replicant forget who they are and hide behind someone else's face and personality. In a way, they're puppets of the center who garner big monetary gains because of the replicant's sacrifices. Just as Yu sees her replicant, she dies, which devastates her two friends. Uma lets the replicants know that they're doing no good by supporting the center. She then leaves behind her locket for her replicant and tells her that Sun is responsible for her father's death, and she has to hate him to be her completely. With their lives at stake, Uma and Chloe run to a hidden garden in the middle of the night. At one point, Chloe disappears out of nowhere, leaving Uma to explore the garden independently. To her horror, she notices the lifeless remains of former Paradise girls, including Amarna, entangled in the leaves. When she looks for Chloe, Uma finds the Duchess preying on Chloe's body and sucking her blood. The Duchess turns her attention to Uma as she prepares to make prey of her as well. Suddenly, Uma's replicant stops the Duchess from doing so by pretending to be the real Uma. It bids Uma some time to untangle herself from the vines before stabbing the Duchess to death. The Duchess's demise causes the cave to collapse after she turns into roses. Along with her replicant, Anna, Uma escapes into the rowboat where they run into Marcus. In tears, he apologizes to Uma and explains that her mother told her that she chose Sun over him. However, Uma already felt too betrayed to forgive him and sails into the night with Anna. The reason for Uma's defiance from her family is Marcus. Sadly, he's also the one to betray her. Uma has lost some faith in him after finding out that the center paid him to come to the island. She's sacrificed everything, almost losing her life in the process, only to find out that Marcus is not worth her love. It awakened her to his true intentions and nature. Halfway to the mainland, Anna reveals that she can no longer return to her former life because nothing is left. Uma assures her that everything will be fine, and they continue to develop a plan. Upon arriving at Uma's house, Anna pretends to be her and continues to marry Sun. While the celebration is ongoing, Uma sneaks into the room to seduce Sun before killing him. The guests hear a loud thud from upstairs and Anna volunteers to check on her new husband. With this, Anna is free from blame because she's downstairs among the witnesses during the murder. After discovering Sun's body, Anna looks out the balcony. She sees Uma, and both of them exchange a friendly smile. To continue the plan, Anna screams for help and Uma's mother runs to her immediately. After securing her revenge, Uma flees while Anna is free to live a new life as a wealthy widow. In retrospect, the film is a statement about how gender roles are often absurd and repressive, especially for women. The characters are in their 20s, but they're treated like children. They're forced into identical and uncomfortable uniforms at mandatory tea parties, yoga classes, and salon sessions. The real reason for the center is to replicate them, not rehabilitate them. However, Uma's defiance has proved more than once that she can choose whoever she wants to be.